let's say we're going on a trip. We're going to take an airplane. We're going to go to Hawaii. Okay, and we're up in the plane and we're on our way and we look out the window and we're like, oh my goodness, we are so high up here, right? And then the pilot gets on and he says, we are flying at a blank of 20,000 feet. What's that keyword that I'm missing there? Altitude, right? We're flying at a certain altitude. Now, an altitude is the height from the plane to the ground. How would we go about measuring that? So what I mean is, like, if I were to draw a segment to show what I'm talking about, an altitude, how would we draw that segment? Would I draw a segment from here, let's say, grab a segment from this point to over here? Would that measure altitude? No. The best possible way to measure an altitude is like a distance, right? The height is a distance. And we talked about a height being the length of the perpendicular segment from a point to a line. So if this is my point, so let's make a perpendicular. If this is my point and I'm going perpendicular to this line, that's the altitude of the plane, right? I can measure that altitude. Let's see. If I want to measure, I believe it's under this menu. Yep. I would measure from this point to that intersection point. And of course, this is a small segment, but think about it in terms of like maybe thousands, right? 8,000 feet. So we're flying at an altitude of 8,000 feet. You would measure it straight up and down. That's what we call an altitude. So the definition of an altitude of a triangle is the perpendicular segment from a vertex to the opposite side or to a line that contains the opposite side. So that wording's a little bit different. Write that down and I'll show you what it looks like. So here's my triangle I'm going to start with. It looks like a scalene acute triangle. Now I'm just going to construct one altitude, okay? So an altitude is a perpendicular segment from a vertex to the opposite side of the triangle. So to create that perpendicular line here, I just clicked on the vertex and then the line or the side of the triangle that I would like it perpendicular to. Okay? Now, this is, like I said, an acute triangle. It's an acute scalene triangle. Watch what happens with this altitude. And let me make this altitude, let's make it red. Okay? Okay, let's make it this red line. If I'm going to move transform my triangle, okay? First thing I want to do, I'm going to make a right triangle. Okay, let's just verify that that's a right triangle. So let's click on my 3 points. Close enough, right? But I know it's not exact, but let's try to get exact 90. Oh, 89.9. Can I get any closer? Oh, 89.09 or 90.09. That's even closer. All right, let's say this rounds off to 90 degrees, okay? What do you notice about that altitude? Where is it located now? It's actually the side of the triangle. So in a right triangle, you have altitudes. The altitude of a right triangle is actually the side of, or the leg of the right triangle. Okay? So in my acute triangle, there's my altitude. It's inside the triangle. For my right triangle, the altitude is actually a side of the triangle. Now, watch what happens as it's an obtuse triangle. Where is that altitude located? It's located outside of the triangle. So when we looked at our definition of altitude right here, right? This definition, if I grab my highlighter here, it says or to the line that contains the opposite side. So what that means is here I would be able to extend my side of the triangle with a line, just like so. Okay? So this altitude is now perpendicular to, yes, the side of the triangle, but the extension of the side of the triangle. That becomes very important when we start talking about areas of triangles, because the area formula of a triangle, and you might already know this, is the area of 1/2 the base of the triangle times the height. Well, the height is the length of the altitude. Okay, so the height of a triangle is the length of the altitude. If you think about this point right here being our plane up in the air, if I wanted to find the altitude of that plane or the height of that plane, I would take a perpendicular line, think about it like a ruler. You laid it right down on there flat, and it would go perpendicular to that side of the triangle. Think of this like our land, okay? So the side of the triangle, picture that like, you know, we're over California, so we're over the land. But as soon as we start flying over the ocean, I mean, you're not going to measure all the way down to the ocean floor. You're going to measure to the surface, right? So picture this part right here that I have, right here. This is all ocean. You could still measure the height of the airplane, right? You could still measure the altitude, but it would be to the surface of that ocean. All right? So an altitude could be outside of a triangle. An altitude could be the actual side of a triangle, as in a right triangle, or it could be inside the triangle.